It is not lost on me that I stand largely between you and drinks and dinner, and so I will not be conducting a 3-hour deepfake training, which we've been doing around the world with folks, but I do want to talk a little bit about that work. But before I do so, I was reflecting on this opportunity to talk briefly with you all at IFES. When I started in elections in 2005, 2006, one of the very first meetings I had the privilege to participate in as an intern to then Election Assistance Commission Commissioner Paul DiGregorio was with IFES and John Pierre Kingsley, and learning the perspective and value of the work that IFES does around the world and the work that all of you do was one of the first introductions I had to election administration and the incredible work that is done around the world to protect our democracy. And so as I sit here and sort of reflect on where we sit on the eve of the U.S. presidential election, or at least the eve of Election Day in the U.S. presidential election, I think about the billions of people around the world already this year that have voted in many of your countries and many of the democracies around the world. And I think about what you all, some of you all at least, will see tomorrow as thousands of election jurisdictions, 8,800 plus election jurisdictions around the United States, open their polls to serve their voters, as more than 100,000 polling places, or around 100,000 polling places around the United States, open, all staffed by poll workers working for nothing or close to nothing, but so proud to serve their communities and their democracy, to step up, and they're Republicans and they're Democrats, and they're in small jurisdictions and large jurisdictions, in cities, in red and blue counties and purple counties across the United States. And I think about the energy and excitement that comes with that as we talk about the work that you all do, as we talk about the work that those election officials across the United States do, across those nearly 100,000 polling places, which, by the way, is about 5 times more polling places than McDonald's in the United States. What an incredible effort this is by our election community, and what a privilege it is to serve this community. I've worked in elections my entire career. I actually worked at the Election Assistance Commission when I started my career testing and certifying voting systems, which has changed incredibly over the years. I then worked in the state of Ohio to help run elections, then went back to the EAC as a commissioner, and finally served at the Department of Homeland Security from 2018 through the 2020 election, working hand in glove with all the election officials to protect the election, and now at Microsoft as the Director of Information Integrity. And what a privilege it is to work alongside first U.S. election officials in my career, and now globally with election officials like yourselves all around the world. And what I find is that you all share, regardless of country, the same commitment to service, to protection of our elections, to ensuring the accuracy, integrity, and security of our elections. And the calling card, or the hallmark of those election officials that I've had the privilege to work with, is the fact that they know that they did a good job, that they served their community well when they wake up the day after Election Day, maybe a couple days after, and they find their name nowhere in the paper or in the media, right? That they have served their community well when, after the election, we're talking about the candidates and issues that were selected, not about the people that administered the election. And so, as I sort of peer towards tomorrow and the days that follow, I think about the election official prayer here in the United States, which is to let the turnout be high and the margins be wide. And I hope the election officials in the U.S. all get to experience that. As for my work at Microsoft now as the Director of Information Integrity, my job is simply to serve those officials by providing support and services to value their 2 most valuable resources. The first is, of course, money, making sure that recognizing the fact that elections around the world, including in the U.S., are underfunded and undersupported, but also time, which is probably the most valuable resource that any of you have in conducting elections, making sure that every hour of every day, every minute is valued for them by supporting them with cybersecurity services, by supporting them with work that we've done around AI and deepfake. And I will just talk a little bit about that since it was in the heading. Over this last year since February, I've been privileged to work with the team at Microsoft to conduct 160 trainings around the world to over 6,000 election officials, campaigns, candidates about AI deepfakes and the challenge that AI poses to our democracy. And the one overwhelming response that we've gotten to this work is the importance of the continued conversation about this. As our Microsoft Threat Analysis Center, who tracks nation-state activities targeting elections, has seen, the use of AI and deepfakes is happening. Our adversaries are trying and using it, though perhaps not as broadly as first expected, but that will only increase in time. And so our work is really focused on three main purposes. The first is limiting the impact or amount of AI-generated content that can impact democracies around the world. The second is creating tools that both expose or detect those deepfakes and then educate voters on the possible impacts. And then the third is working with local and state and global election authorities around the world to educate voters about where the trusted sources of information on elections exist and promoting those trusted sources through public awareness campaigns and engagement directly with election officials. And I'm proud to say, working with countries around the world, we've been able to reach millions of people just simply with information about where to get trusted information directly from the source from election authorities. We've also been able to work on something called content provenance, which allows election officials, candidates, and campaigns to put trusted sources, trusted data of information about where pictures, videos, audios come from, so that when voters are presented with information that may be false or misleading, they have the tools necessary to identify what is trusted, where it's coming from, and how they can identify it. This is something we've been able to work with global election authorities, candidates, and campaigns, including here in the United States, where we see the use of this improving trust around the election process. Then finally, the work to engage on media and information literacy, which is going to be a generational challenge for all of us, to continue to engage and talk about how information's disseminated, how it's shared, how we can identify the sources of that information, and how to get additional context or trust indicators about that election information out to the public. This is something that we've focused on throughout this year. We've partnered here in the United States with the National Association of State Election Directors to promote their election information broadly across all 50 states, including a focused public awareness campaign in the swing states, all with the goal of slowing the spread of mis or disinformation around the election and promoting trusted, authoritative information from election officials. And I will say, in my experience, election officials always plan, adjust, and prepare for what's next. They constantly ask themselves, what could go wrong? What steps can I take to prevent that? And what more can I do? And in the area of information integrity and information operations following the 2020 election, I've seen in the United States a massive effort by state and local election officials to push out facts about where to vote, when to vote, how to vote, and constantly reinforce to their voters that the process is secure, that it has integrity, and it's resilient to attempts to defraud it. And so as we move forward, I look forward to continuing to serve, to work with all of you, to promote things like content credentials and content provenance, to respond and expose our adversaries' attempts to use AI to deceive our voters, and most importantly, to reinforce that our election processes around the world are secure, they have integrity, and are accessible to all. So thank you. I appreciate the time. Good luck and enjoy tomorrow. It is my favorite day of the year, every year, but especially in a presidential election year. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Who is ready for one more panel? No, it's okay. I only have about 45 minutes of closing remarks for us now. But no, thank you so much, Matt, for those remarks, and to Microsoft, who was our platinum sponsor for this event, along with Smartmatic as a gold sponsor. And then we've had Google, Manat, Phelps & Phillips, NewVote, Amazon, Voorhees, biometricupdate.com, Dominion Voting Systems, and Democracy Live. We couldn't be here without the support. and really appreciate it. For those I haven't met, my name is Katherine Ellena. I am the Vice President for Global Programs at IFES, and I am delighted to have you all here, still here at almost 6 p.m. the night before elections. We are getting excited for tomorrow. I want to just give a few administrative announcements before just finishing with a brief video and personal story. Tomorrow, breakfast will be at 7 a.m., the same place it was this morning. And then please, if possible, be here on time at 8 a.m. There's a really important briefing for the polling station tour. And when you come into this room, if you could please sit at the table number that aligns with the bus you will be taking tomorrow. Now, to find this number, you can go onto the WOVA app. The numbers and the assignments are going to be updated in the next 20 minutes. You'll be able to find your name and number, and when you come in the morning, if you sit at that same table, we will load buses by number. Any questions, please reach out to our staff who are on the registration desk. I think that's all I needed to convey for tomorrow. So just briefly, we have a video of Senator Mark Warner. He is my senator from Virginia, been in office since 2009 and was a governor of Virginia prior to that. He has been a long-time champion of democracy, particularly of technology and democracy. And while he was not able to be here with us in person, he was kind enough to share a brief video message that we wanted to share with you. And some of you will be visiting polling stations in his constituency in Virginia tomorrow. So if we can pull the video of Senator Mark Warner up.
Hi, I'm Virginia Senator Mark Warner, and I want to welcome you to the 2024 IFES U.S. election program and to Washington, D.C., obviously the capital of the United States, but also the heart of our democracy. As you'll discuss today, in America, each state and municipal government plays a unique role in our democracy. Instead of a single national election, Election Day in America is a result of thousands of local elections administered by state and local governments all across the country. It's great that we'll be able to see this unique approach to election administration up close tomorrow. And this is the year around the globe for elections. This year, 2024, 128 national elections were held in 76 countries, with over 1.5 billion ballots cast around the world. This massive mobilization of voters all around the world to choose their governments could not happen without your commitment and your leadership. I do want to take a moment to touch on some of the challenges we have faced leading up to our elections this year. While platforms like Facebook, X, and Instagram have become essential tools for candidates to reach voters, misinformation and malign interference have become all too prevalent as well on social media. And of course, artificial intelligence threatens to amplify both the speed and scale of which these interferences can interfere not only in American elections, but quite honestly, in elections all around the world. Within this supercharged threat environment, it's crucial that election officials like you, as well as voters themselves, have protections in place to remain resilient. In the United States, I'm leading efforts to improve information sharing amongst academics, civil society organizations, election officials, and the private sector to coordinate efforts with those social media platforms to combat election disinformation. IFES's leadership on these voluntary election integrity guidelines for technology companies and the Cybersecurity Initiative are welcome steps forward in this effort. Both initiatives will help election officials work with each other, the technology sector, and civil society to better prepare and respond to technology-driven threats to elections. There's a clear need for improved efforts to equip local media, civic institutions, and election officials with resources to address the misuse of technology. This will require sustained relationship building with local institutions like the election management bodies you represent, which makes this gathering such an essential part of this effort. IFES is doing its part to help respond to these threats to the integrity of our elections. And I'm trying to do my part in Congress, and I know that we can count on your active engagement to support this work in your countries and regions all around the world. Together, we can and we will build resilient democracies that deliver for all. Thank you again to IFES, and hope you all enjoy your visit to the United States at this historic moment.
So thank you to Senator Warner. IFES is extremely lucky to have champions on both sides of the aisle here in the US government, and to be able to go and visit some of the polling stations for one of our senators tomorrow, I think is going to be a treat. I also wanted to just say thank you to all of the panelists and speakers from today. We have touched, I think, on a lot of sensitive topics, which can be challenging, from money in politics to foreign interference to technology failures, and obviously being able to have somewhat of a closed-door discussion like this among peers is incredibly valuable. Obviously, we all bring our own different views and perspectives and experience, so the views don't necessarily represent IFES as an institution, but we are incredibly grateful to everyone who's been willing to come and express these views and share their experience with us and with all of you. So just to finish, I thought I would just give a last personal story, and that is to say that there has been a war going on in my household for many months now. I have what I would call bicultural and bipartisan marriage, meaning my husband and I have differing views on politics. And we have a 19-year-old daughter who is just finding her own political voice. Unsurprisingly, she is very passionate about expressing that voice, and she tends to be quite a single-issue committed voter. And my husband loves to play devil's advocate. So there have been many arguments. We have flipped between, I would call it civil war to cold war, depending on the day or the issue. But 1 week ago, the three of us drove down to our local, very small library. We each were given a ballot. Me as a new citizen, as an immigrant to the US, my daughter as a first-time voter, and we each cast our votes for the president, vice president, senator, member of Congress, a proposed Virginia constitutional amendment, and a county fiscal issue. And it was peaceful. And election officials were welcoming, they were helpful. We voted in secret. The technology worked. And after my daughter cast her ballot for the first time, everyone, including poll watchers from Republican and Democratic parties, clapped for her. So let's not forget, as we go out tomorrow and we experience the diversity of voting in the United States across Virginia, Maryland, and DC, let's not forget how remarkable this act is, and we should not take it for granted. Tomorrow, we at IFES are so excited to give you a front row seat to a historic election. Historic for us as Americans, and historic for many of you and your countries. So I would just say to you, tomorrow night we will focus on the results, and we will talk about them on Wednesday. But tomorrow we go out and we will celebrate the act of voting and what it means for all of us in this room. Wishing you a lovely evening tonight. We will see you bright and early tomorrow morning for for our polling station tour and then our watch party. And please, could we just clap one more time for all of the speakers and panelists today? Thank you very much.